On May 27, 2010, the Wilderness Committee and the Council of Senior Citizens held an event in Roberts Creek on the Sunshine Coast to talk about keeping British Columbia's rivers wild and power public. Gwen Barlee of the Wilderness Committee explained how British Columbia's provincial government has unleashed a wave of private companies snapping up wild rivers in order to dam and divert them, lakes too, in order to make hydroelectric power and then sell it back to us at very, very high prices.
Over 800 creeks and rivers and now lakes that are staked in British Columbia. So how did this gold rush start? And how it started was with the 2002 BC Energy Plan. And in point 13 of that plan, BC Hydro was restricted from producing new sources of hydroelectricity. And obviously that's not the case in Site C, but they were prevented from competing against the private sector in terms of run-of-river projects. And this is what point 13 of that plan said. The private sector will develop new electricity generation with BC Hydro restricted to improvements at existing plants. But we're in kind of a scary situation today again where we have 800 creeks, rivers, and now lakes that are being staked by private power developers, including the likes of General Electric. And this map, is a little bit of a visual slap in the face, and it shows that in the last 7 years, there's been a 1,140% increase in water power license applications in British Columbia. And then just closing, this is a picture of Pitt River. And it's a beautiful river and has very high fish values. And I just like closing with this because this is a river that was saved by people standing up and speaking with one voice. And it always, even though things can seem a little bit overwhelming when you have 800 creeks and rivers staked, again, with people being part of the community, realizing the importance of wild rivers, this is what can be saved. And by standing together and speaking with one voice, we can do it. Thank you.
Dan Bouman of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association explains how a private company has blown a hole out of a lake, Tyson Lake, in order to drain the water through a tunnel to produce private power, but how something has gone terribly wrong and glacial clay is now bleeding into Tyson Creek and out into trout and salmon habitat.
Okay. So this is Tyson Creek. And you can see from the color of the water, right over about there, that there's quite an influence of muddy water here. I'm sitting in a little tiny Cessna with my chin on my knees and one hand on the chicken bar and the other hand on the camera. And that is Tyson Lake. And this is the road. And there's the penstock pipe. And there's the tunnel right there. And the date is April 30th. You can see there's just a little bit of open water. Right there. Okay, there's a sheet of ice there. It's about, I think it's about this thick. If I could blow this picture up, you would see that there's slabs of ice all along the shore. And that's because as they started up operations on January 22, and as they drew the lake down, those slabs of ice along the edges broke off. Now, you can't really see the creek on the left side that empties into the lake, but the creek has created a delta of sediments on the extreme left there. And as this sheet of ice was being drawn down, as they were running water into the penstock, this sediment delta was demolished by a sheet of ice, resulting in the mobilization of sediments from one end of the lake to the other from top to bottom. So when the facility was inspected on the 17th of February by the Water Stewardship Division, they noticed that the water quality was extremely poor. In fact, it was so poor that it was a violation of the standards of the water license. So Water Stewardship Division got hold of the power company and told them about the situation and instructed them to shut the facility down. And that notice happened on the 19th of February. And it was shut down for the most part, except that there was a risk of that penstock pipe freezing, so some water was still running. Also, those minimum flows in Tyson Creek, that's another legal requirement. So they continue to pump the turbid water through the rewatering pipe into Tyson Creek because they had to meet the minimum flow requirements. On the 21st of March, I started getting a lot of pictures, most of which originally came from my friend Bob Price, who was at the head of Narrows, and he's going to show you some more pictures. But
Bob Price of the Council of Senior Citizens and his wife have a cabin near the Suni River estuary. Tyson Creek flows into the Suni. Hear how Bob explains how he found out about the disaster on the Tyson Creek power project and how he found out about the glacial clay flowing in to Tyson, then Suni, all through the salmon habitat.
Bob Price is a resident of Narrows Inlet and has lived in the shadow of the construction of the Tyson Creek power project for the last year. And I know I was holding my glasses for a reason. Tonight he's speaking on behalf of the Council of Senior Citizens Organizations of the Sunshine Coast chapter of Costco. You might know the group as Costco, and they're the host group here tonight along with the Wilderness Committee. So Bob, take it away.
In October of 1998, on the Chippewa side of the Zuni Valley, through logging practices of putting logs across stumps and backfilling for logging roads, in October, 30,000 cubic meters of mud came down the Chippewa Creek, into the Zuni River, out to Zuni Narrows, out to the left beyond the power lines and out to Skookumchuck. And the next day I got a phone call from Greg Hemphill, who was the BC Forest Manager of Powell River Sunshine Coast District, and he said, "We've had an event, and I want you to know we're onto it, and this is what's happening." And that was a disaster. It scoured the river, etc. in 1998. Now I'm going to go forward to a power project. On March 19th, I got an email from one of the team members of the proponent and said, "We'd like to know how often you access your property." And all of a sudden some pennies dropped, and I said to my wife, "We're going into Narrows, there's something wrong." So we went into Narrows, and what you're going to see is what we found on the morning of March 22nd of this year. Okay, now, when I went in March, normally the Zuni estuary, you can see to the bottom, you can see down the water. It's absolutely magnificent. It's sort of like the river runs through it, water. There's March 19th. You can't see it. We went again on May 9th. There's what's normally nice and clear, beautiful blue water. Mud. I use the term mud, but the experts that are on the other side of the fence say there's no environmental damage. But you can see that that's not a great place to be a fish.
Thanks to MLA Nicholas Simons for emceeing our event. I'm Joe Foy with the Wilderness Committee. Bye for now.